I'm alone for this presentation. Good morning, everybody. I need 20 minutes of your time before lunch, so thank you for staying here. Maybe a small advice for the Dutch people: if you want to solve it very simply, you just need to add some artificial intelligence. It's what we listen in the media and in the private sector. It solves everything, so maybe you can try. No, just a joke. So my talk today will be about open data and linked data and the archive. As you probably know, open government data is something which is quite spread in Europe. And in Switzerland and Sweden, it's the two countries where the implementation of open government data initiative is being done by the archives institution. It's quite an exception. And this is important because we are at the center part of this activity. And linked data within open government data is something like a byproduct. I will explain it a little bit later. But we think that because linked data is connected to open data, we have to very carefully also analyze what we can do with linked data as an archive institution, what we can do for using that, and what we can do for our role of preservation institution. Open data and linked data, what are we doing in Switzerland? So in Switzerland we have an open data portal which is in operation as a final version since 2016, beginning of the year. We have more than 2,400 data sets coming from approximately 40 organizations in Switzerland, so at the federal but also cantonal and local level. That's for the part open government data. In addition to that, since the beginning of this year, we are also operating a linked data infrastructure. So basically a triple store and Sparkle endpoint. And that's something that we got as an addition to the open government data portal. And we also, for the last 3 years, we worked with other archival institutions in Switzerland, so cantonal mainly, to experiment what we can do with linked data in order to bring together our different catalogs. And that's a small project we started. There is a web page called Outlook for Archival Linked Open Data that you can visit, and we try there to implement some aspect of linked data within this small project. What we plan to do next in this domain are to put in place a linked data productive platform. I will talk a little bit about also later, and what we call an archival information system that we call Future to replace our current system. So in the link that exists between open data and linked data is following. If you are in this field of open government data, a person called Tim Berners-Lee, that was mentioned already yesterday, came with a 5-star model to define the quality of data, which is published on the Open Government Data Portal, and 4 and 5 stars are mainly given to linked data sets. So that's something we promote as open data portal supplier for the different administration, and that's why we have this kind of data available also on the portal. Now I will give you some information basically about what we plan to do in the way we would like use linked data within our institution. And we have two basic domains. One is to use linked data for the archival catalog, and another one for using linked data as simply a publisher of data. For the cataloging, as I said, we plan to replace our current system by a new solution that we define or called IAS Future. And we can see it very simply as a solution where our catalog, instead of being in a normal relational database, will be stored as triples in an RDF triple store. And on top of that, we will have a web-based archival information system where all our employees could be connected to manage this information. That's something that sounds very, very basic and usual. Then on the other side, as we are publishing also part of our catalog, the part which is open, we can think to also publish this as RDF and to allow a third party to implement application on top of this data. But the major aspect we plan to do is that the web-based archival information system we would like to have internally will be a solution that will connect to the two different RDF store, meaning that we will have a part of data of information which will be local, like also preservation information, any other very specific data which doesn't need to be or must not be disclosed. And the other part, when the data is available to the public, will be only available or made available or stored in the public part. So it means that with this solution, we will have only one example of one basic triple, either in the private part or in the public part, if it is to be publicly available. And that's something we are planning to experiment and to determine if it's a really feasible solution before we would like to request to make a call for offer in this direction. The roadmap we have for the publishing data, we are at the moment in what we can call an experimentation phase. So we have a linked data infrastructure. We are managing this infrastructure. We have data sets which are publicly available, not only ours, but from other institutions in the Swiss administration are also publishing data sets. What we are doing is to move to a more productive situation. We are now trying to defining the requirement for a central infrastructure for the public sector, so very productive, high-end and scalable linked data infrastructure. And in addition to that, to support the data owner with different conversion harvesting tools so that they can very easily bring their data on this infrastructure. And then going to operation with some kind of best practice and supervising the definition of national ontologies if needed, and also work with data quality instruments, which is key for us. And this is something like resonate with what John Sheridan said yesterday. So by doing that, we will be confronted to actual and current data that are still owned by the different administration. But since we will be managing this infrastructure, we will be already in part of the game to improve the data quality, because we could intervene on this field here. So that's for the linked data publishing path we have in mind, and for sure one of the data sets for us will be our catalog. That's clear. And there will be other like databases that can be converted in linked data for publication and other data sets we have at the moment in normal form. And now I want to address the other part of the talk, which is related to the preservation part. So if the administration are publishing linked data, and more, that's what we hope and what we see amongst different countries who are also working on this field, we will be confronted for sure in the future with data sets that could be delivered to us as archive institution for the preservation. This means we have to, from our point of view, we have to look at that now in order to be prepared for preserving these data when they will come as real archive data sets. So if we look at that, there are two ways to look at that. One is to be quite optimistic, and what we could say that linked data, that is also called web of data, can rely on the same technology than the web archiving that we know, that is in place in some places here. And okay, that's just one specific kind of web, so why not using the same kind of technology? Another positive aspect of linked data is that the data model within a linked data dataset is also described as linked data. So it's sometimes called that RDF is self-describing, and it helps because we don't need to have descriptive information outside the data set. We can rely on this which is inside. So another positive point of linked data for the preservation. And the third point I mentioned here is that data sets can be dumped as text file. There are digitalization of linked data that can be used, and that's pure textual information that can be very easily handled, stored and retrieved without specific tools. So that's a positive aspect of linked data for the preservation. Unfortunately, there are also some quite more negative aspects. Is that linked data is very strongly tied to the web architecture. And one aspect of linked data is that the URIs must be dereferentiated, so that we need a connection to the web to make sure that the information is really trusty. Can trust this information. So this is an important aspect which is not very easy to handle. Another point is that if we store a data set and we retrieve and reinstall this 20 years later, it might be that a triple reconnect to a resource which is still valid in the web, but has changed. One example I thought when I came here is that now we can say in a triple that Great Britain is part of Europe. If we say that in an archive and we bring that back in 20 years from now, we can still connect to Europe, but we will see that at the moment the definition of Europe is no more the same. So this information that we saw as valid today is no more valid in 20 years. And that could be a point for interpreting the information which inside a data set. Basically, if we reinstall linked data sets, we need also to reinstall or bring together Sparkle endpoints, because there are a lot of information or a lot of processing which is done within the Sparkle endpoint, which is also part of the definition of linked data. So it's something that also must be handled. And the last is where is the limit of a data set we decide to ingest? As you can see, that's a new drawing of the cloud. I took it yesterday. It's 1 month old. And it shows quite large amount of data set, and all these data sets are connected to each other. So if we decide to ingest one single circle here with connection to other, maybe we need to also ingest the other, etc., etc., and at the end we need to ingest everything. So we have to define limits, and that must be one of the problems we have to look at. In orange, it's all what is government, and in the red on the right side is what is about science. So you see there are quite some large amount of data sets available at the moment. Our roadmap for the preservation is basically the following. We are starting some kind of analysis. We found a very interesting project done in 2014-15, I thought, which is called PRELIDA, for the preservation of linked data, and it's a very inspiring project for looking at what has to be done in order to be ready for this topic. And I mentioned also 2 other projects, Diacron and Lot2, which are also connected to this domain. So what we do now is to carefully analyze that, and based on that we would like to run some R&D project under the supervision of archival institutions. In contrary to these projects which are mainly research projects from academic institutions, I think if there is a consensus here or with other archives that this is an interesting field, we have to run something all together, but under our responsibility and not an academic responsibility. And then in the operational part of that, we have to define for sure policy and to implement different kind of tools for ingesting, for preserving, for the preservation strategy, and also for the publication of these data sets. So, as a conclusion, I'm on time. Linked data, I try to give you an overview of what we do in linked data in the Swiss public sector. Give you some information about the roadmap, what we do for using linked data in Switzerland, and what we consider as something interesting to look at, which is the preservation of linked open data in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Does anyone have any quick question?
What technology do you use for the triple stars?
No, currently we are experimenting with startup.
Okay.
We used also once Virtuoso, but now we have moved to startup to make some experiments with that.
For what it's worth, we have plenty of experience with many platforms.